One of the big changes that came to Vengeance Demon Hunter for Dragonflight was a change to how Frailty worked, and it's now super interesting and, in my opinion, rotationally defining. So we're going to dive into it today. Before we do, though, if you like Demon Hunter content, or just WoW content in general, consider subscribing. Lots of my viewers aren't subscribed, so every subscription would really help me out. With that out of the way, let's go on to the video. So Frailty has gone through a few different forms since it was first introduced back with the class's conception during Legion. Currently, Frailty is applied through Spirit Bomb, and all targets hit get one application of it, which leeches for 10% of the damage you deal to them. However, when it started, it was a little bit different. It was still applied by Spirit Bomb, and it was a heal for 10% of the damage done, and it was essentially a funky form of leech that only affected some targets. Now, one big thing was different back then, and that was Spirit Bomb. Spirit Bomb itself used to launch a nearby soul fragment at your target, dealing 252% AP, so attack power, shadow damage to all nearby enemies and afflicting them with Frailty. That's sort of similar to now, except it didn't center around yourself, didn't consume more than one soul fragment, and didn't scale its damage with the soul fragments consumed. Also, it was shadow damage, which was weird. Anyways, Blizzard quickly figured out that 10% leech wasn't really good enough for this form of Vengeance Demon Hunter, until it was buffed by a whole 5% in patch 7.1, up to 15. In 7.1.5, they then changed it to fire damage and gave it the 20% buff, before eventually redesigning the talent into how it is now in 7.2.5. In BFA, the healing percent was reduced back down to 10%, but it remained consistent throughout BFA and Shadowlands, with only some small changes coming into the number of souls consumed or how many targets will be hit for full damage. And then came Dragonflight, and in Dragonflight, we saw massive changes to this talent. So we're here on beta, and we're going to go over the new changes to Frailty coming in Dragonflight. Like I said at the start, Frailty's gone over a few different iterations throughout its life cycle, throughout the life cycle of the class, since Vengeance started back in Legion, of course. However, now we see this brand new form of Frailty coming to the game. It's super different than how it was before. There's an entire part of the talent tree dedicated to it, so let's look at that right now. So I'm actually super excited for this new form of Frailty. I think it really changes how the spec plays. I think it looks pretty fun to play with, personally. I've enjoyed playing with it. I've seen some other more, better Vengeance tanks. I'm not a Vengeance by main. I am a Havoc player. But I've seen other people play with it to great success. I think it looks really fun. So this build is kind of just what I've been running in dungeons. Ignore the class tree. Basically, this entire side here is all Frailty buffs. So if you look at the top, Frailty, you're going to always get this. It being on the top 2 means that you cannot go past the first gate without grabbing it, which is really good. So every Vengeance everywhere, as long as you're actually using talent points, is going to have Frailty. So enemies struck by Sigil of Flame are afflicted with Frailty for 5 seconds. You heal for 8% of all damage you deal to targets with Frailty. So right off the bat, big changes. So 1, duration reduced to 5 seconds. 2, heals for 8% of all damage, down from 20% or 10% or wherever it was before. And 3, it is now applied with Sigil of Flame. So if I put my Sigil down, you can see here, boom, Frailty is now on the target. Now there are talents that buff this even further. So these 3 talents don't actually do anything. So we're going to kind of skip past those. We go down here, Spirit Bomb. It is back. It costs more Fury now, so it's up from where it was before. Consume up to 5 available soul fragments, then explode, damaging nearby enemies for 3,000 fire damage per fragment consumed, and afflicting them with Frailty for 5 seconds, causing you to heal for 8% of damage you deal to them. Reduce damage beyond 8 targets. So this is your AoE applicator of Frailty, how it was before. You get your souls, get your Fury, and then you rip a Spirit Bomb on a ton of targets, apply your Frailty to everything. So that is how it worked before. It's going to stay the same way in Dragonflight. However, there are talents down at the bottom that really change how it works. So this next one, Void Reaver, is the first big shakeup to Frailty. So Frailty now also reduces all damage you take from afflicted targets by 4%. Enemies struck by Soul Cleave are afflicted with Frailty for 5 seconds. So this turns Frailty into a bit of a DR. So for every application of Frailty on a target, they're going to deal 4% less damage to you. And now Soul Cleave also applies it. Now this is probably a better way of applying it in lower target counts or in single target, because Frailty does cost, Soul Cleave does cost less Fury than Spirit Bomb does, so you're able to get more out at a time and can really keep up that duration of Frailty. Why would you want to get out more at a time then? Well, we'll get down to further talents and I'll tell you why. So Soul Furnace doesn't really affect Frailty, it's just, every more soul fragments you consume, more damage. Oops. And then Focus Cleave just makes it do more damage again, so, we'll skip it. What did I unclick? I unclicked something. It's so fine. Vulnerability, Frailty now also increases all damage you deal to affected targets by 8%. So this is a 2-point node. Oh, I messed up something. There we go. So, what else did I... Oh, here we go. Alright, we're back. So, Frailty now also increases all damage you deal by 8%. Now, it is a 2-point node, so 1 point is 4, 2 points is 8. So every stack here is a damage buff on the target. So you can see, we'll go over here, dealing reduced damage and suffering increased damage from me. So we see there, 8% damage increase, perfect. Now the big game changer is the Capstone, Soul Crush. Multiple applications of Frailty may overlap. Soul Cleave applies Frailty to your primary target for 5 seconds. Now you notice that that second part has already come up. So Void Reaver also does that. Basically what it does is your primary target will always have 2 applications of Frailty applied to them, which is really good because multiple applications overlap. So for every single application you have on your target, let me just build up some Fury so I can spend it, it stacks up. So we can see here 2, 4, 6, 24% reduced damage, 48% increased damage, and I leech for basically how much extra damage I'm dealing. So you can just apply another one, I'll show you. 16% of all damage, 16% increased damage. Now those work very well together, right? Because for you're going to be leeching for the increased damage you're doing as well. Now this thing with applying multiple stacks of Frailty at once actually causes some pretty interesting rotational changes to Vengeance Demon Hunter. I think this is pretty sick. So we go here, we'll build up a few stacks of Frailty. We'll get some Fury. So what you want to do now is you actually want to dump your Fury into Frailty before you use your big buttons like Feldev, like the Hunt, or like Soul Carver. So see here, I'll rip the Hunt, and it dealt a ton more damage because of the Frailty stacks I had on my target. We'll ramp back up, we'll dump some more, and then I'll rip it with a Soul Carver. And you see it did 52,000 damage, which is up from the 25,000 damage that it says on there. So you really want to kind of pool your resources now, if you can, to really get those big hits of Frailty out, right? So you're absorbing more damage, so they're dealing less damage to you, and so that you're actually just kind of pumping into your targets with the damage increase. So I did it here. It's a little bit harder with Feldev, because Feldev costs half your Fury bar, so you can't dump as much into Soul Cleave or into Spirit Bomb beforehand, but you still want to do as much as you can. So I think this kind of building into your big cooldown buttons, kind of ramping up so you deal more damage, so you take less damage, so you leech more, is really interesting, and really makes your 1 minute cooldowns that you have, I guess Fiery Rand as well, it does pretty decent damage, really makes those 1 minute cooldowns and short cooldowns that you have feel much more impactful, because you're getting that healing, you're getting that damage done, and, you know, if you need the damage reduction, it is also there. So I think this new system of Frailty is super cool and interesting. I think it's way better than the ones in the past. It's much more... Oh, that sneeze was my weak aura for Feldev coming off cooldown. Anyways, it's way more interesting than it was in the past. I think it gives much more kind of feedback, loopy kind of play style. It lets you interact with it much more than just pushing Spirit Bomb on cooldown and just applying to everything. Kind of ramping up and building into these big CDs is pretty fun, and I really enjoyed it, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it too once it comes to live. So that's it for today for this video. Just want to go over the new Frailty system, give my thoughts on it, give a little breakdown for you Vengeance people out there. Havoc will still probably be my main content. I'll do some Vengeance on the side as well. I know I've heard a lot of people say that there's like nobody doing Vengeance content, so this is for you guys. Stick around if you want to see more. Like the video, comment down below what you think of the new Frailty system, and thanks for watching the video. I'll see you guys next time.